Hello everyone and welcome to the morning call. The images went round the world and arose general concern. Migrants auctioned off as slaves, a phenomenon that is no longer in doubt in Libya. Since the publication of the documentary on an American channel CNN, the international community has mobilized to put an end to this practice. And what a better opportunity than a meeting between African and European leaders to discuss this. As a matter of course, the issue was at the heart of the opening debates yesterday in Abidjan, Ivory Coast, during the 5th AU-EU summit. For African and European leaders, the time has come to find solutions to this worrying problem.
And of course, during this discussion, the EU and AU leaders each condemned the practice. AU Commission Chair Musa Faki Mahamat said the international community had to find a solution to the root causes of this degrading and humiliating phenomenon. He had earlier urged swift action to identify all perpetrators and accomplices and had welcomed the Libyan government's announcement that it would investigate the auctions. As part of getting solutions to the phenomenon, a joint task force of the EU, AU and UN is expected to be formed to save and protect lives of migrants and refugees along the migratory routes and in particular those inside Libya. Well, this follows a meeting on the margins of the summit between the United Nations Secretary General, Chairperson of the AU Commission, President of the European Commission and the EU's High Representative. This task force would address ways of accelerating the assisted voluntary return of migrants to their home countries and the resettlement of those in need of international protection. Joining us to speak about this is Jerry Simpson from the Human Rights Watch, joining us from Geneva in Switzerland. Jerry Simpson, good morning and thank you very much for joining us. So Libya says it needs the support of the international community to deal with this menace, but wasn't there something they could do as a government to prevent slave trade in this day?
Well, first of all, the abuses that the CNN video uncovered and which the International Organization for Migration reported on in April this year relating to public slave auctions is the raw act of criminals. It's every government's responsibility to prevent criminal activity on its territory. Now, in Libya, you have two problems. First of all, you have three different governments with different degrees of control over different parts of their territory. So there it clearly has a major challenge, which applies to all types of criminal activity and human rights abuses. But more generally, for decades, Libya has engaged in various degrees of extreme forms of racism against sub-Saharan Africans, which has only gotten worse since the fall of Gaddafi. This has been institutionalized through, for example, systematic abuses of migrants and refugees in government-run detention centers, where guards have tortured, sexually abused, and otherwise committed violence against detainees. And international organizations have documented how prison guards have sold detainees to criminals for the purpose of forced labor and slavery. So this is not a new issue, and it is an issue that Libya has categorically failed to deal with for many years.
So, Jerry Simpson, what role would the international community play in protecting the migrants, of whom many are fleeing poverty and other social challenges at home and are even desperate enough to sacrifice their lives?
Well, first of all, on the issue of slave auctions, the rather narrow issue, but serious issue of slave auctions, and the broader issue of forced labor of sub-Saharan refugees and migrants in Libya, it is positive that the UN Security Council will be soon considering a resolution that addresses this issue. And we know that some countries, including some parts of the United States, are considering requesting sanctions be placed on Libyan officials if they fail to end this awful abuse. That's a very specific way in which the international community can address the specific issue of slavery in Libya. More generally, these kinds of abuses have to be stopped, and significant pressure from all levels, from the UN, from the European Union, and from other partners of Libya should be exerted on the authorities to make sure that these kinds of abuses stop. So that will be one way of helping migrants. Secondly, the European Union is, especially Italy, is currently engaged in helping the Libyan Coast Guard intercept refugee and migrant boats in international waters between Libya and Italy and taking these people back to Libya, where they're abused in detention centres, instead of allowing them to disembark in Italy and receive protection in the EU. And that is an absolutely awful change of practice compared to the previous practice of saving these people at sea and helping them reach the EU. So that is also an immediate step the European Union could be taking.